This game was teased 7 years ago in 2013. For reference, I was 11 years old and in middle school when this bad boy came out teasing this masterpiece. It's sad to think about all the people that have died just waiting for this game. If your parents wouldn't buy you games rated M when you were a kid, now it doesn't even fucking matter. You're probably old enough to drive a car, buy a house, and start a family. I'm about to lay down the lore for, in my opinion, the best game of the year, hands down. It's got Keanu, it's got cybernetic enhancements, and it's even got giant mantis metal blades that come out of your fucking forearms. If you're watching this, I'd just like to tell you thanks. It means a lot to me. Now let's get into the world of Cyberpunk, boys. The timeline of the Cyberpunk series diverges dramatically from our own, roughly around the 1990s. Although other divergences do occur well before then, albeit smaller in size and scope, where the fall of the Soviet Union at the end of the Cold War leads to a dissemination of nuclear weapons on the black market. Coupled with the US government deep state called the Gang of Four, the world soon finds itself in a midst of an economic crisis and the collapse. Proxy wars, trade wars, and a resurgent Europe butt against the prevailing US world order. Eventually, brief nuclear exchanges and biological warfare around the globe cause the gradual decline of Western civilization. Societies collapse and many governments either dissolve or are reduced to reactionary, petty authoritarian states. You might be asking yourself, who's the Gang of Four? Well, they're an organization being comprised of the NSA, CIA, FBI, and the DEA. The entire modus for the Gang of Four takeover of America was their near omnipotence. The various members of the gang were legally capable of doing anything to anyone at any time. In the chaos, corporations filled a vacuum of power amidst the collapsing social order. Technological advances unbridled from government oversight or ethical limitations lead to hundreds of new inventions. As time wears on, some corporations become as powerful as the countries they are housed in. Ultimately, 4 corporate wars would occur before 2077, each one becoming more overt and deadly than the last. In 1859, Sasei Arasaka is born in Tokyo, Japan. Sasei was known for being a shrewd businessman in the Tokyo prefecture and had experience in industrial companies. If you think that last name sounds familiar, it is. He was the founder and former CEO of the Arasaka Corporation from 1916 to 1960. This said guy had a kid in 1919, and he's still alive as of 2077. He's 158 years old, and he also hates America. Here's a quote from our friend Saburo Arasaka. "I hate America. I will bring them to their knees by supplying them with everything they want, and then strangling them with their own dependency. I will sell them the chain which they will bind themselves to me." If you're asking yourself, why does he hate America so much? Well, it goes all the way back to World War II. In 1942, during a routine bombing run over Guadalcanal, American crewmen F-4F fighters engaged a flight of Japanese Betty bombers out of Rabaul Island. The Zero fighters escorting the Bettys broke out of formation to engage the attackers, and a pitched air battle followed. While Lieutenant Saburo was weaving in pursuit of one of the F-4F Wildcat fighters, he passed through another American plane's line of fire. Saburo wasn't vulnerable long enough to be shot down, but several bullets smashed through the canopy, shattering his left arm and driving splinters of perspex and metal into his left eye and skull. Barely conscious, he let his fighter plummet towards the ground 15,000 feet below. Precious seconds later, Saburo struggled back to awareness only to see the ground rushing towards him. Despite the punishing pain and the loss of the use of one arm, he pulled back on his stick, leveled his plane, and regained control with only a scant 2,000 feet to spare. Then, patching himself up as best as he could, he began the long haul back to Rabaul, fully believing that he would die somewhere over the 560 miles of ocean he had to cross. Somehow, by a miracle, he managed to make it back to the base despite his injuries. After delivering his report, he passed out and he was transported back to Tokyo, where he discovered that due to his injuries, he would never be able to fly again and was also due to be medically discharged. His injuries were so severe that he was permanently blind in his left eye and that his left arm, although not amputated, was damaged beyond use. Saburo lamented over his injuries and wished he had died a dignified death over the skies of Guadalcanal, rather than face the humiliation of a cripple. Due to the dishonor he brought upon himself and his family, he considered ritual suicide. However, he pressed through and remained in the care of his home. On August 15th, 1945, the day of the Japanese surrender, the emperor addressed the people and made note of their surrender. Saburo was definitely thunderstruck. He was on the verge of seppuku in the compound's cherry tree grove of the hospital, but before the blade was able to puncture his stomach, he had a moment of epiphany and a vision. He envisioned a Japan rising above the humiliation of losing the war and becoming an economic powerhouse. Saburo retracted the half-inch dagger that had penetrated his abs, and he returned to the household. He began intense studies into the fields of politics, economics, and history as to become a worthy successor to his father and to ensure that Arasaka would one day rule the world. Saburo took over the company in 1960, shortly after his father's death, and branched out from the simple manufacturing company that his father started. Banking and security, along with manufacturing, were now the three pillars of the Arasaka Corporation, and by the 2020s, the once small manufacturing company had become one of the most powerful corporations in the world. Not to mention, during these years, Saburo's wealth multiplied tenfold. He had become one of the richest men on the planet. In 1980, Saburo and his then first wife had a child named Ki, a boy Saburo planned on grooming to eventually take over the corp. Saburo also remarried in the 1990s to his third wife, Mashiko Arasaka. While they were together, they had two children, Yorinobu and Hanaku. During the 2000s, Saburo had undergone numerous surgeries to implant various cybernetics, as well as a new eye and a right arm for the ones he lost in World War II. However, by 2020, at 101 years old, he became wheelchair-bound in his family's estate just outside Tokyo. After he became wheelchair-bound, he handed the reins of the company to his eldest son, Ki. During Yorinobu's 21st birthday, Saburo told him everything about the family corporation. Yorinobu disowned his father after being told the truth about the corporation's success. During the Fourth Corporate War, the Arasaka Corporation faced off against Miltech, a corporation Saburo grew to hate due to its CEO, Donald Lundy, reminding him of the American pilot who shot him down during World War II. However, Saburo gave full control over to his son, Ki, as he ran the war effort in Night City. Yorinobu, behind his father's back, worked with the Japanese government to nationalize Arasaka, which soon cut off Saburo from Ki, costing them the war. This means that Yorinobu absolutely hates his father and the Arasaka Corporation. If you made it this far in the video, I'd like to say thanks for watching. This has been FleshDaddy and everything to know about Saburo Arasaka and the Arasaka Corporation. Please hit that subscribe button or like, or comment that you hate my guts. Either one.